Now we're going to have a quick, brief look at the ABC of prophecy, and then we'll work our way through the alphabet until we get to, what do the Americans say? Z. All right? If you come from my country, you say Z. Now there was a king, Nebuchadnezzar, his ancient name, Nabukadnezar, and he had a dream. And this is an amazing story. Jerusalem was destroyed in 586 BC, and Nebuchadnezzar took these young people and the entire nation captive and led many of them in chains back to Babylon. And Babylon becomes a symbol of the religious conglomerate that we'll also have at the end of time. The book of Daniel is fascinating. The stories in the book of Daniel are typological stories of events that will take place at the end of time. And the prophecies tell us what those events are. So this king took Jerusalem captive and destroyed it in 586 BC, and here are some of the archaeological reliefs of the Israelites being led in chains from Jerusalem to Babylon. Now, Daniel and his 3 friends were taken up in the court, and because they were of royal descent, they were going to get a good education in the wisdom of Babylon. Now, in the 2nd year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. And his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. And so the king summoned the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, the astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. And when they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, "I've had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means." Daniel 2, 1-3. So here, this king has a dream, and he summons, who does he summon? The enchanters, the wizards, the astrologers, and all of these he summons. The king answered, it says there in verse 5, and said to the Chaldeans. Now here's an interesting group. So we have the Chaldeans. The thing is gone from me. In other words, he can't remember it. Now all of these groups of people are very, very interesting if we look at them typologically, referring to the future. If you will not make known to me the dream with the interpretation thereof, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. Now that sounds pretty harsh, but the kings of those days had absolute power, and if you made a decree like that, then it was irrefutable. It stood. So here this king had this dream, the thing went from him, and he brought the wisest people that he had. And the Chaldean, he was the learned, religious person that was to be the one who told the king exactly where what was and what he needed to know. So the Chaldean was the educated, religious personality. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, "There is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore, there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such a king of any magician," notice again, here we go, "astrologer, or Chaldean." Now some people may think that this is a notion that existed in primitive days. But this is typological. This is not primitive. This is very modern, as we will see. And it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there's none other that can show it before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. So here they were at an impasse. God had given the king a dream, and he had blocked it so that these so-called wise men were not able to answer the king. For this king, the king was angry and very furious and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon, and that would include even Daniel and his friends, because they had been educated. Now, have any rulers in recent times done such terrible things as to say we have to get rid of all the educated? Adolf Hitler did it. Adolf Hitler did it. He had so many professors executed that it will take eternity to find out exactly what happened. Well, young Daniel went to Ariel, the king's guard, and said, you know, this is a terrible decree. Let me see what we can do about this. We have a God in heaven who might be able to help us, who will help us if it deems it necessary. Give us some time. And so Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And he urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise of men of Babylon. So here we have God confronting all of those other groupings, the magicians, the astrologers, and all of these people. And then God miraculously reveals the dream to him. He runs back to the king and he says to his guard, do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king and I will interpret the dream for him. The king asked Daniel, also called Belshazzar, are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it? Daniel 2:26. And Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king has demanded, and notice again, here we have it over and over and over again. Cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king? So here are all these categories of people. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets and makes known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be, and what's the operative word there? In the latter days. So this dream is not some ancient dream that's not relevant to us. It concerns the very times in which we live. Daniel 2:27 to 28. Now some people will say, this is primitive. I would like to suggest that this is modern. Did you know that there are organizations associated with the United Nations, for example, that use esoteric methods to determine which way and which direction the world should be going? Did you know that Share International is an official United Nations affiliated organization that uses channeled messages from a so-called Maitreya in order to tell the world politically how it should operate, and that they have the same categories of people, the soothsayers and the channels, the ones that are communicating with the other side, and they have their Chaldeans, the educated religious individuals who come and speak to the United Nations and to the nations individually as to the way in which they should go. Nothing has changed. In fact, we have reverted way back to the same situation as we had over there. Do you recognize this president? That was Ronald Reagan. Now let's see what he did.
And then in September, Gorbachev proposed a pre-summit meeting in Reykjavik, Iceland. Washington agreed. The astrologer fixed the time and the date of departure, and at 9:45 on October the 9th, Reagan flew to Reykjavik.
For instance, if you have very bad Saturn, you should cultivate Jupiter so that...
So who did he call? He called the astrologers. And if we go to my country and the president has to make an important speech, who runs before him? The Sangoma, which is the soothsayer. And he will pour out the dolosa, and he will say, this is the way you should go. We believe we are so sophisticated today, we are exactly at the same point as were these ancient kings in that time. We have lost sight of a God in heaven that can interpret dreams for us, if he gives them. And we're in exactly the same situation. Nothing has changed. Daniel 2:29, as you were lying there, O king, your mind turned to the things to come, and the revealer of mysteries showed you what is going to happen.